Following some breaking news out of the UK where police say a man has stabbed several people. They are calling this a major incident.
At Hart Street in Stockport in the Merseyside.
A Taylor Swift-themed dance class.
Names of its 3 young victims were released. B.B. King, Elsie Stankham and Alice Aguiar.
The girls were 6, 7 and 9 years old.
And 9 injured, 6 of them critically. 2 adults are also in a critical condition.
Where there is shock and grief this evening.
I know the whole country is deeply shocked at what they've seen and what they've heard.
A 17-year-old male from Banks in Lancashire, who is originally from Cardiff, has been arrested on suspicion of murder and attempted murder.
I'm Sharon Phillips and I run Sharon Phillips School of Dancing, teacher, owner, principal of the dancing school from children 18 months up to 90 years old.
So my name's Matt Annable. I work for Bristol City Council and I work in children's safeguarding.
I am Sarah Mahoney, I'm a dance teacher.
My name is Caitlin and I am studying professional policing at uni.
Yes, I do recognise it. It's very sad to think about what happened. Just makes me feel horrendous for the mothers in the situation. It's every mother's worst nightmare. What happened on that day? I mean, it shouldn't have, and it's wrong. And it just makes you want to hold your babies very close to you.
I've heard of it, yeah. It was really upsetting and really shocking when it first happened. I don't know how, well, he's an adult now. I don't really know how, as he could just turn 18, he just decides to do that, or what was going on in his mind. And it's really sad towards the parents and the family. That's, they've all lost their children.
Yeah, so the picture of the 3 girls that died at Southport, yeah, just absolutely shocking and disbelief. Working in a dance school, working with children like that could have easily been us. Yeah, I don't get how somebody just suddenly walks in and thinks that that's right to do. Obviously, really upsetting, and made us really sort of sit down and look at how vulnerable we would be to something like that.
So I think it's the unthinkable is what
It's the worst thing. You couldn't think of anything worse as a parent, I mean, obviously, I couldn't think of anything worse as a dance teacher, but because you are responsible for those children. And, and being a dance teacher for so long, you care about every pupil that comes in, do you know what I mean? And you want them to have that positive experience. And then I can only imagine, she would have been like the dance teacher in those moments where is safety when you've got somebody coming through like that? What do? Put the kids in the cupboard or find somewhere to hide, go and grab them, put yourself in. You just can't imagine that whole situation, and definitely that was the time for reflection for the families, support for the people that had lost their children and everybody else in that dance class. Let's not forget, although those 3 girls died, you've got the, lifelong injuries probably for the dance teacher, everybody that was involved. But how would those other girls, that were in that class, how are they going to mentally get through that, not have reoccurring nightmares and feel safe in a school environment, in a dance class? How are they ever going to feel safe again?
I can imagine that it was extremely traumatic. Witnessing an event like that will probably stay with any person for their whole life. How it affects someone individually will be very much dependent on the individual themselves and how they respond. And children and and adults respond differently to traumatic events.
Is there any treatment or support that you can give to children who've experienced an incident so severe?
I think that those children will probably need some fairly significant support around them. Most children will probably benefit initially from having a strong family network around them. Not just family network, but professional network around those children. So it might be their teachers in school being really aware of what they've experienced and being able to perhaps put interventions in place for them as time goes on to have some specific grief or trauma related therapies. But those need to be tailored to the individual needs, age, development of those individual children. Play therapies, art therapies, dance, music therapies, things of that nature, rather than things that we might ordinarily associate with being therapy that adults access. But what we do know, in terms of what research tells us, is that children who experience trauma often are impacted later in life, and that might seem really obvious, but there is a direct connection between childhood trauma and then difficulties emerging for adults later in life. Family, friends, and other loved ones is the thing that most likely will support them best.
It is a very emotional thing to go through, to hear something like that, and to be able to potentially reflect to your own life really personally.
Definitely. I think because I am a mother of a child that's the same age as those girls who also loves dancing, it makes you think and kind of reflect on everything that you do. So you don't really want you second guess now sending your child to a club. The first thing isn't what do they get to do. The first thing now is how do you lock the doors? How do you keep them safe? And I think for me, with the dance teacher side of it as well, it was, oh my God, if I was ever in that situation, what would I do? And how would I feel? It really hit home. I don't normally watch the news, but this, for some reason, I couldn't stop watching it, and just the instant I found out, I just felt pain for everybody involved. I was genuinely shocked. Shocked doesn't kind of cut it. It really just had a massive impact on me straight away. The devastation that's happened, and it should have been the best day for those children, and I just felt there was no anger, it was just all sadness for the children, all for the parents, for the teachers at the dance school. It's just devastation is what I felt.
When you first thought about studying policing, did you ever imagine that one day you could be looking at a case like that? Yes, I did. I do think about that with a lot of cases, that there is a chance that I will be doing it, especially since I don't mind the idea of being a first responder and helping people straight away on the scene. So that could be a scene I would go straight on to doing. But I'm willing to help. I will be willing to. Do you think that the fact that it is now potentially unsafe for a child to be in an after-school activity, do you think that is really shocking? Was it something that you kind of already knew because of your job, or is that kind of alarm bells within your career?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I am surprised for this specific incident. I am surprised that someone was able to walk in off the street through an open door where there are young children. In my role, I'm going into schools on a fairly regular basis, or family centres, and it's always very difficult to get in. You have to go through so many checks in terms of safeguarding and checking who you are, checking ID badges, getting you to sign in and sign out. For the most part, family centres have a locked door and you can't access them. You have to ring a doorbell. There's some sense of a barrier there, but I don't think that is consistent. For the most part, security's taken pretty seriously.
Do you think ISTD reacted well to this incident, and did they let out advice?
Yeah, they sort of gave advice like they do in sort of safeguarding and recommendations. In dancing, there's nothing sort of that is enforced because, you know, as dance teachers, you're not licensed or anything like that, you know. Obviously, some of us have our ISTD qualifications, and then obviously it's all recommendations. So a lot of the dance world is done in quite a voluntary checks, you know, that you get your sort of DBSs and you get your health and safety, safeguarding, first aid sort of thing. So it is just really recommendations, and then down to the teacher to put in, or the owner or whatever, for them to put in place what they feel is right for their situation. And for me, I just do not feel comfortable, feel much happier locking the door, starting the class. And luckily the halls, you know, just to a little thing like putting a doorbell on, but it meant then we could lock it, people could still contact us, so you don't feel like you're locking people out. In certain halls, that's fine because there's only us in the venue, so you can feel like you can almost create a little safety bubble because you can lock the door. Other venues that may be multiple, you know, you still can't lock down the place and keep things safe. And although you think a lot of the parents would support our safety measures, we have had a bit of a backlash as well from some parents for putting in the safety measures, even though it's all done with the best interest to not only protect us as dance teachers, but to protect children.
Did you question taking your child out of dance as a result of this?
Not out of dance, because I know that instantly there was protections put in place. From the moment it happened, I knew that there was new policies put in place, but it has made me second guess putting her into any other club. You know, people say it wouldn't happen around here, but you don't know. 100%. It shouldn't have to be the thought now that, oh, I don't want her to go to that club because they can't lock the doors, they can't guarantee this. It shouldn't be the thought that her not being with me could put her in danger, and it just makes you want to kind of cling. And I know people that have actually pulled their children out of clubs or just refuse to send them, because if they send them out somewhere that they're not with them, they could be at risk. And it's a shame for the parents, it's also a shame for the children. It means that they don't have that experience growing up that children should have.
I think it depends where it is. You know, if you were doing this like big event outside in the public, you know, I think you should have some security, because you never know what could happen, unfortunately. I think you shouldn't actually need to have security, because you should be able to freely go out there and do what you want without having the worry that something could happen to you or the people you're with. But like being at school, you know, you have like the security being at school, you have like the gates around it, you know, you always do that just in case for people. And I think if you are going out for certain clubs and doing certain things, you should have some sort of security with you, even if it is having just an adult or someone there that will like protect you if you're a kid, or, you know, something small, but at least you have the sense of security with you, I think.
You are a gymnastics coach. like me, so you have some knowledge in the area of safeguarding and looking after children and stuff, joining that with your education in policing. Would you say that it's hard to implement security for a lot of places? Maybe. I don't know. I think like for us being a gymnastics coach, I think we're good at having like the safety and everything, and we're good at having the security of the children and making sure that everything's all good. You know, we follow the rules and everything. You know, we're always looking around to make sure that there's no one, you know, dodgy lurk around the corner or anything. You know, we always have our guards up, and I think that should be the same for many places.
I trust now the security that we've got in place. We've definitely improved a lot of it. However, I think for me, I am much more on alert when I'm setting up, when I'm letting the children in and out. It does make you think a lot more about anything that could happen, and you know, it could be something as simple as somebody in one of the halls I teach in, we've got big glass windows, and as somebody just walking past, I'm very aware of it now. I'm very conscious of like, who's that, what are they doing here, why are they here, you know, whereas I wouldn't have necessarily thought before about having an open door to let some fresh air in, or in one of the halls that I work in that kind of is generally fairly open. Now I will make sure that if there's any other clubs going on in that, whether it be adults or anything like that, we are shut in our own corner, and if it's not there, I've been known to kind of have a conversation with those people that are there and make them aware that I need my children that I teach to be safe. So it's much more at the forefront of my mind than it ever has been, but I do feel like we've got it right.
No, never thought. I mean, I've been teaching for 33 years, and even with all the safeguarding, all the courses that we do, that has never ever come up as a potential threat. I mean, the worst things we worry about before was people trying to come in to use the toilets. Yeah, just super sad. But no, never in a month of Sundays would I ever have thought that that would be something that would happen.
So, looking at children who weren't in the room, other children who may have heard about this, of all ages of children, who've seen the news and seen what happened after all of the riots, how would they be able to perceive this, and do you think that brings an effect to their lives as well?
I think probably in their immediate communities. So some of the coverage that I saw at the time, not just some of the negative responses that came out after, but actually communities came together and held vigils, and it felt like the community was very affected by the events, understandably. I think it's natural when it happens in your area, or when it happens close to home, or it happens where you might have some sense of connection. It's easy to feel disconnected when it's very far away, and I'm not sure how children in the southwest, or how families in the southwest feel about it. You know, I think people will feel absolutely saddened by it when talking about it, but sometimes when it's not on your doorstep, it feels hard to maybe have that connection that the local community might feel.
I can't see that we could ever go back from this, because it becomes that sort of point, doesn't it now, where people are going to talk about it. So if you're looking at any safety measures, or if you're going to courses, it's going to be something that's unfortunately referred back to as like almost like a case study. Do you know what I mean? That we have to learn from that. You know, child protection policies get changed, don't they? Safeguarding gets changed. What else can we do? I really don't know. Yeah, I mean, I had a big backlash on the community. Was that right? I think that was, you know, some bad press, from my understanding, that, you know, maybe the riots that followed didn't really have the best interests of those families, what they were going through. I think they were sidelined, unfortunately, a little bit.
I completely agree with you, and you went straight on to my next question, which was if you thought the initial incident, the stabbing, was overlooked by the riots, because the whole point of this project is to look into the initial incident, which is a dance lesson is such a normal thing.
Yeah.
Most of my friends grew up going to dance lessons, or at least a sports activity.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's no longer an assured, safe space, it did feel a little bit overlooked. And do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it was sort of like the focal point initially, and then obviously when it came out about the person that had done it, it just seemed to take a different direction every day, and every day it just seemed to get further away from the children. Those families having to prepare funerals and everything like that, and up the road they're rioting and loitering and just pinching stuff from, you know, shops. What has that ever got to do with what happened with those children? Do you know what I mean? I think it became really far removed, and I think, you know, those families did sort of try their best, but they shouldn't have been having to stand up to say we don't want rioting. They should have been left to grieve for their children, and, you know, the community grieve for what had happened in what seemed just a normal everyday community that could have easily been people across the road from our hall having to run in to save children. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it just went in a very bad direction, and I think those children got lost and their families got lost. And I mean, there was quite a few kids in that class, and they were supposed to be celebrating somebody like Taylor Swift, which they all just love. But definitely the rioters took over the limelight and just made it something it didn't need to be.
I think that it was very unfortunate the way things played out following that, in terms of misinformation about the suspect and their faith, and you know, and the response to that in terms of those I'll call it far right rioters in Southport, and I think that was an extreme response, and it was highly inappropriate and unlawful.
It completely took away from what happened. The riots and the media coverage detracted from the event because they made it into something that it wasn't. Nobody still, as far as I'm aware, nobody knows to this day what caused that to happen on that day. But the media took it somewhere it didn't need to be, and it kind of took it away from the girls, and it took it away from the family, and it made it something completely different, and it made it about race, and it wasn't, as far as I'm aware, about race.
I think it was overwhelmed by the riots that followed, because I initially did not hear anything about the dance or anything on that side of it, but I heard a lot about the riots, which then made me follow through with the story on what happened to them. So I don't think it really shed much light to the incident, unfortunately.
I think that it garnered a lot of media attention, and probably the right amount of media attention in the moment in terms of the incident itself. In terms of where we are now, that's several months later, I'm not sure that there's really any media attention about it particularly. We do run the risk that it becomes another incident that sort of fades into obscurity, and there hasn't been, that I can see, a published review that outlines what the kind of failings were that agencies and organisations can learn from. Because I would expect and it might be that it's just not been published yet, and that might be happening and underway, and I'm sure it is. But I would expect there to be some learning that could be identified from this.
As someone training in policing, how did that make you feel?
Well, I think personally, at this very moment, I wouldn't necessarily want to be in that situation, because I don't really know what I'm doing yet. I'm not sure how to act. I'm still learning. I'm still learning on, how to act, what to do. I still don't know how to detain people yet. So, if I had a bunch of people coming at me for something that I personally didn't do would be quite scary, and I'm sure it was scary to a lot of the other police officers, because people seem to go for police officers even though they weren't the ones that actually did that. Like, they didn't do anything. They might have not even have been in the case like at all. They've probably just been told to stop the riots, and that's, you know, what they're told to do. That's what they've been trained to do. So yeah, so I think that would be quite scary on them, and would definitely be scary for me if I was put into it. But I'm sure with a lot of training, with a lot of, you know, help, and they all had each other to back up, and, you know.
Do you think that it would ever be a kind of all children scenario in something as simple as an after school club?
Possibly. I mean, there are a lot of weird people out there who like to do weird stuff, so yeah, crime happens with everything, and it can happen to anyone as well. So the idea of it happening to a bunch of children can happen. So
I don't think we can minimise the experience of those children and families who will have both been themselves a victim and experienced injury and recovered, or being a parent who's lost a child, which I can only imagine is the worst experience for anyone. For me, that's extremely shocking, and it makes me quite uncomfortable thinking about it. Probably, yeah, as I said, equally as shocking that there is a child, 17, anybody really can find themselves in a place where they feel like that is an action that they want to carry out. We can only hypothesise about what was going through that 17-year-old's mind in that moment, and what factors led them to feel like that was something that they wanted to do. It's very difficult. Equally, at the same time, you know, we've seen what we see and know what people are capable of. Humans in general, they're responsible for the worst things in human history. So in many ways, it's less shocking, but it's a child, and that's always very sad to see.
I think that's been forgotten. I think with the whole media coverage and the subsequent riots, I think that is a big thing that has been forgotten. It would never forgive what he did, never forgive what happened. But for me, I think what has happened to him, what has created that, and I don't think there is any kind of answer to that, but it just shows that it could be anybody as well. It doesn't have to be an adult, it could be absolutely anybody that can affect you and cause harm.
It does also involve with what's happened to that person when they were younger, because a lot of it can reflect on how they were treated as a child, or how anything happened to them. Which shouldn't, it doesn't change the fact that that's fine for them to do, to go on, kill a bunch of people, no. But you also have to think about changing what happened to them when they were younger and helping them. But for a lot of cases that I have looked at and that has, people have heard of, for children or going on into adults, it has been through something that's happened when they were younger, and it does seem to follow through. It's like, I hate to say this, but if they were abused when they were younger, it may follow on for when they're older. They may do it to other people, or same with anything else that happens. So you might need to look into, what's going on at home first, and then figure out on the rest.
Still can't quite believe it's happened. Obviously, there's probably still a lot to find out, but yeah, just from a parent, I could never imagine dropping my child off to a dance class and just never seeing them again. So absolutely heartbroken as a parent for those parents. As a dance teacher, just a huge amount of responsibility now to keep the children we've got safe and enjoy it, whilst the little ones especially don't realise that we're locking the door and trying to keep them safe. so that they're not scared. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, probably, yeah, heartbreak on one hand, responsibility for doing the right thing and keeping everybody safe.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from my perspective, it's, you know, it's been hugely impactful in terms of, you know, the awful nature in which it happened. I think it's a really unfortunate place to find ourselves, where we have a child who has committed such heinous acts, and I think that probably sticks with us all, particularly for those of us who work in safeguarding and work with children with various vulnerabilities on a daily basis. So from my perspective as a professional, it certainly has helped me to refocus some of my thinking in certain types of scenarios where young people are concerned. Nationally, I don't know, it's hard to say. Those communities, those children, they will experience that forever. Whether or not someone living in another part of the UK feels as closely connected, I'm not sure.
I'd like to think it hasn't impacted my child's life, because I think I'm one of the lucky ones that knows how to look out for safeguarding if she goes to a club. However, it has potentially taken away some of the freedom that she has as a child in a park to run around and hide in bushes and play hide and seek with her friends, because I do kind of always want to know where she is. For me, it's just put me more on edge. Just to think that that could happen anywhere in a small town. It's horrible. So yeah, it's just making me more vigilant, and it does make me worry more about her.
Well, I think it is like a really sad event that happened, you know, and I do feel sorry for the family and the friends that it all happened to. I hope that, you know, I don't actually end up being involved in something such as serious as that, you know. Hopefully it's all, you know, with how people do and everything. I do think about it a lot though, to be fair, and especially, you know, when I do gymnastics, when I'm coaching, I don't know if it's just the police inside of me and I'm always just on my guard, but I do think about what would happen if people came in, what I would do to solve the situation and what I can do to protect the kids. So, yeah.